All right, guys, welcome in. It is time for another edition of Full Court Press. As always, we have to recap the night before. I had a good night for clients. I ended up playing one play. It was Binghamton. They found a way to win that game outright, so that was a nice winner for me. But Rob Vino, I ruined the parlay, and of course, I was at the game that I used for the parlay, Florida Gulf Coast in North Florida. And so I want to come on and acknowledge that, but also give a couple takeaways from that game that you might be able to use in the ASUN tournament next week. So Florida Gulf Coast had a 9-point lead at halftime. I kind of was like, all right, we're just, it kind of felt like one of those games where we would sort of just maintain that and win by 9 or 10 points. Not only did they lose the second half, they lost the game after being up 9 at half. And my takeaways were North Florida did not look like a 6-23 team. Played much better than even just watching them play did not look like a 6-23 team. And that Florida Gulf Coast team is very average. In hindsight, I wish I didn't lay points with them because that's just we've kind of talked about it at times. Not the best basketball team, and I think they had a little bit of a fraudulent win streak. So I would be willing to fade them. The other thing you guys need to know is this is the first year that the Atlantic Sun is not going to play campus site tournament venues. However, 2 of the campus sites from the Atlantic Sun are hosting portions of the tournament. So what I found out last night is Jacksonville is hosting the tournament at, I believe it's Swisher Gym in Jacksonville, UNF Arena in North Florida. And then I think the final, they may use like Veterans Memorial, like the big arena downtown. So it'll be interesting to see how that conference tournament plays out. Being a neutral site, I don't think they're going to let like JU and UNF are not going to be allowed to play at their home venue. So, we learned something last night. Stan, who's always in the chat, great to meet you. He came out for the game. We had a great time. So, it was a good night in North Florida or in Jacksonville at North Florida. Wish we had a better result in the parlay, but shout out to you, Rob Vino. Great call on Montana State. Hopefully some people just played that straight because, of course, the FGCU game was over before Montana State tipped off. And what else? How did your Thursday night go outside of the Montana State winner?
So Montana State was part of a 3-1 Thursday night, and it missed 4-0 was missed by 1 point. The loser was the Idaho team total over 78.5. They got the 78. So we got stuck right on the edge of the cliff with that one. But otherwise, Montana State got home. Jacksonville State, excuse me, got a little lucky there, Adam, because the overtime is the place where underdogs go to die. And sure enough, Delaware, the reason why I made the play was basically it's a 6-man rotation where everybody's got to go 40. And boy, Delaware played terrific basketball, gritty basketball for 40 minutes. And then when overtime took hold, you found out that they're a little bit fatigued at this point. Another long trip to Jacksonville State, which is in Alabama. We've talked about CUSA trips. A lot of credit to Delaware last night, but I benefited from the extra 5 minutes because Jacksonville State, had a lot left in the tank, and Delaware did not. And then the other play, why not go back to one of your favorites? Cal Poly team total over 81.5. They get to 102. Probably should have played it a little stronger than I did. But recap here with Binghamton, the double the CBB firepower package goes 4-1 again last night after a 7-0 the previous night. So 11-1 the last 2 nights. Those of you who just picked up and joined or purchased the package, either 3-day or full season, remainder of season, we're off to an 11-1 start here. So good news on the package front, Adam. Hopefully we continue that, or we'll try to continue that here tonight.
Great day to never a better day than right now to sign up, because I've already locked in a 5%er tonight, and it's Friday. So it's essentially the weekend package. You'll get all Saturday and Sunday. And Rob, we got to get into it. Before we get into it, shout out to our chat, because Garth had the team total under in Missouri, Kansas City, which hit. And our pal that played Cal Poly, we talked about it on the show yesterday. No reason to not think Cal Poly would win that game comfortably, and they won the game comfortably. Dropped 100 on Long Beach State. So you win with the team total. And I forget who that was in the chat, but someone had Poly -5.5 for a winner as well. So we are going to get into it today. Garth, I see you in there, and he already wants to talk about the Sun Belt, which we could do the whole show. We could do the whole hour on the Sun Belt today, but we've got to start with one of the biggest games of the weekend. So let's head out to Champaign, Illinois first. Feature game, Michigan, Illinois. Feature game, Rob Vino, and arguably one of the best games of the entire Big Ten season right here. You got Michigan as a short road favorite. Illinois, obviously going to be tough on their home court. What do you do with Michigan and Illinois? We know it's going to be a great game.
I want in the worst way to be on the home team here, Illinois, because I just feel as if Michigan is, and rightfully so. Listen, Michigan's done what they've done this year. They deserve everybody's utmost respect. But I feel like the separation of respect heading into this game between media, written material, et cetera, all the way to the networks, right? They just seem to be all over the Michigan side. And for me, when you go through this, Adam, and of course, when you respond, you could look at it and tell me what you think of this. But personnel-wise, to me, Illinois is a team with two. I don't know if I can call Boswell an NBA point guard. But let's say this. They have two elite point guards at this point in time. I think they discovered Wagler along the way when Boswell got hurt. You come back with the two Ivicic guys who can both drag Mara away from the rim because Illinois' 2 7-footers shoot threes. I know Mara likes to plant himself under the rim and use the 7-3, 7-4, whatever it is, but maybe somebody else is going to have to try and deter the 7-footers from shooting threes here. If a couple of them go, it makes life difficult for Michigan. Yes, Lendeborg is a tremendous player, NBA lottery pick. However, on the other side, playing the same position as him basically is Markovich for Illinois, who's been dominant at times offensively. Andrei Stojakovic, who's been dominant at times offensively. I mean, Ben Hamrakis comes off the bench and basically can light it up from three. Hamrakis, excuse me. So when I go through this, I just think Illinois' got as many options for scoring here as Michigan does. They match up well. They've got the same type of length, et cetera, et cetera. The problem I run into in this game is the difference in tempo bothers me a little bit. Michigan's the fastest tempo team in the Big Ten. Illinois, very, very slow, moderate, deliberate. I mean, their possession numbers are way down there as far as pace of play is concerned. Now, can they go ultra slow and take on the Michigan half-court defense all game long without going through some sort of a scoring drought? We'll see. It seems like nobody really puts Illinois into a scoring drought, or very rarely does that occur. Michigan's got the defensive ability to do so. So you'd rather have Illinois at least be a mid-type tempo team where, we're going to see some outlets, some breaks, maybe some opportunity. Brad Underwood, maybe he'll coach it into him tonight. I'm not in on their meetings, but let's run when we get the chance because we don't want to set up against these guys. Where Michigan's going to go up and down the floor, get some easy buckets, et cetera, et cetera. Home floor means a lot in Champaign to me, but Michigan's been in tough venues before. And might as well say it now, Adam, because we've talked about it since the Michigan State game. When you get Michigan in this price range, it's hard to ignore. So for me, the side became more difficult than the total. Illinois is so efficient that maybe the pace doesn't drag this total down and it gets up and over 158. There's been a push towards that over since the overnight opened at 155.5. 2.5 point move toward the total. I still think it might get over. Illinois, even with their pace, finds their way to 80 in most instances, or at least high 70s. And honestly, I don't know that Illinois can stop Michigan from doing so. So for me, I think my strongest lean here is going to be toward over 158. If you're shopping really, really well, there's 4, 5, 6, 157.5s out there that you can still pick off. So I think for intent of this analysis and time of day we're doing this, I would use 157.5 as my stance here on this game. Michigan, Illinois up and over 157.5. Great game. Just a little bit of difference in tempo style. Otherwise, I think Illinois personnel-wise matches up really, really well with Michigan.
Rob, we joined forces for a 11 a.m. over yesterday that soared over in the Charleston Hampton game. So I think we're going to do it again for the feature game here. That's the way I look as well. Would be toward the over. Now, listen, Illinois is not a bad defensive team. When you look at the overall rankings, I don't think anyone looks at Illinois and says, "Well, this is a bad defensive team," or they're not like they're on the kind of the fringe of the top 30. I think most would say that's pretty good, but I don't think they defend the way that you need to defend to keep Michigan from scoring. If you look, it's very interesting, but to me, like the teams that Michigan has struggled to score on have not necessarily been the best defensive teams that they've faced. It's like TCU comes to mind. That small, we've talked about them on the show a couple times where they've got the really aggressive guards that are going to just make life miserable for your ball handlers. Like that's the type of team that tends to give Michigan trouble. And that's not really what Illinois is going to do. Illinois will play some zone. Michigan has no problem with zone. So for me, like I do think Michigan scores their share of points. I think, like, again, going back to what we, going back to our breakdown of Michigan State that you referenced from a few weeks back, you get Michigan in this price range. It's tough to pass up, like, because I still think you look at Michigan and they're a cut above like almost anyone else in the country. And I still think they're even a cut above Illinois, even with how good Illinois is offensively. But there's certainly like paths to victory for Illinois in this game as well, to the point where, you talked about, obviously, the hype home spot, tremendous crowd, definitely need to factor that in. The fact that Illinois, if they can shoot it and they're hot shooting the ball, like they could win a high scoring game. But for me, like, I don't really want to have to rely on Illinois sort of like playing out of their minds to cash a ticket, because again, there's no wiggle room here. Very little, at least. Like, you basically need Illinois to win the bet. And I'm not really comfortable doing that against Michigan, especially when, how many times are you going to be able to do that against Michigan, this Michigan team in a season? And you basically were able to do it last Saturday with Duke, right? Taking Duke as the very, very short dog, and they won the game. But I'll argue that Duke was a much tougher matchup for Michigan than Illinois is, in terms of being able to put the ball in the basket and play the game that they want to play. So, Rob Vino, I'm with you. Points in this game is, if I was going to bet this one, which I'm not, it would have to just be points in the over, because it's two coin flip for me on the side. And I feel like if you play an under here, you're kind of preying on Illinois having a rough shooting night. And I wouldn't want to bet against that because they're home and it's a big spot for them. So I'll call it over with you as well.
Yeah, Illinois has so many scoring options, Adam. If
Yes.
it's not Wagler, it can be Stojakovic. It could be Mirkovic. I mean, they've got plenty of options that Michigan's going to have to defend here. And to be honest with you, they didn't do a superior job defending Duke's guys. The one intangible here, and again, Elliot Cadeau did just recently have an off night, and Elliot Cadeau has been a real spark plug for this team. He helps that interior play because he stretches the defense out with the three-point shooting that he's had this year. And Boswell may be one of the best hounds, I guess you would call him, because when you said TCU guards bothered Michigan, and that triggered this thought that Boswell is that guy. Defensively, Cadeau's going to have a somewhat tough time here unless Illinois is forced to pack it in against, Michigan's bigs because they can't handle them. But if that's not the case here, Elliot Cadeau is going to know he's being guarded tonight by Boswell. Now, of course, Michigan, just like I said about Illinois, has so many other options. It may not matter, but I still think Elliot Cadeau has to be a factor in this game for Michigan to win, at least somewhat of a factor. So I'm going to stick to total here because I just like the massive amount of offensive options that are on the floor here. And I do think, I know I said earlier, Illinois, and of course, statistically proven out that Illinois is a slower tempo team, but I do think they'll take their opportunities. I mean, having watched them play 6, 7, 8 times this year, they're not necessarily a snail's pace. Maybe overall, majority of the game, they prefer half court. It's kind of the Brad Underwood way since he was at Stephen F. Austin years ago. But I think they're going to take their opportunities to get out and go, especially on their own home floor.
Yeah, that should be it's going to be a great watch. Obviously the feature game of tonight, but there's a lot of other games. So let's move on. Like I said, I joked about it, but what a night for the Sun Belt Conference. I love that they do this. They've been doing this for years where everyone plays the final slate of Sun Belt games is always this Friday. And Rob, it is arguably as impactful of any final slate of games because of the way they organize their conference tournament. I mean, you're talking about like potentially having to play 2 extra games. Some people would even have to there's scenarios tonight where a team with a loss might have to play like 2 additional games than they would have played had they won. Like that is how crazy the scenarios are in the Sun Belt for 2 reasons. One, it's a gauntlet format in the conference tournament. And 2, there's like 6 or 7 teams with very similar records. So it's like there's a lot of different spots up for grabs. These are 2 teams. So let's go to Garth here. He says, he got back on track last night with UMKC. Yes, that was a great call. He said he's looking at the Sun Belt tonight with Coastal and James Madison. And he likes the over 139.5. So I'll let you talk about the total. I guess what I'll say real quick about Coastal Carolina overs is so me personally, I found them to be kind of stagnant offensively at times, where they will sort of stand around and wait for someone to do something. I've noticed that with them at different points during the season. However, they do have some shot makers on this team. That's one thing. If you're talking about, they've got guards that can fill it up. AJ Dantzler came over from Lemoyne. Guy plays no defense. He's just, he would, the part of the reason Lemoyne had a hard time last year is because they had a bunch of these scorers that just didn't do anything on the defensive end. And he was one of them. But I see he's caught on nicely at Coastal, 15.7 points per game. You got another local guy. Well, not really local, but I got confused. It was Josh Beadle was at BC. He's leading the team with 17 points per game. And then Rasheed Jones, who was my favorite from last year's team when I went down to Conway and I got to see this team play and pretty much knew they would be better this year than last year. He's the one that is just a big-time shot maker. Could have 2 guys on him. He's going to pull up and be able to put the ball in the basket. So talk to me about this game, about this total, because, again, I haven't loved Coastal's floor spacing at times, and I don't think they run great offense, but they've got a trio of guards that can put the ball in the basket. And if you can put the ball in the hoop, that is still the name of this game, Rob, above all else. So do you have any interest in the side in Coastal James Madison, and do you agree with Garth that there's going to be points in this one?
Just to start real quick here, Adam, this Sun Belt final night is so crazy that I don't know, whatever time it was, 2:30 this morning, 2:35 a.m. this morning, whatever, I had to take to X and just comment on how crazy this last night is going to be and how many things could change with the results in the Sun Belt tonight. And to your point, the Sun Belt is such a weird tournament that the number 1 through number 4 seeds, they'll get 4 days off before they even have to play a game. The tournament starts. They don't go until we have to make it through 8 and 9 and 5 and 6 and whatever until the 1 through 4 even have to play. So it's a huge advantage, I would guess, if you're 1 through 4 and there's 7 teams that could end up in that 1 through 4 tonight. So just a crazy, crazy frenzied night in the Sun Belt. It'll be fun to watch. Madison and Coastal, I'm going to guess that Garth is playing over because he's just playing the number 139.5. Because I find it hard myself to support a case for these two teams and the way that they play, just getting to 140 fundamentally. They played once already, 67-65. James Madison wins. There's a little revenge on the Coastal Carolina side. If you're looking to play side, you might want to look at Coastal here. They lost at home. Or you could look at it the other way and say James Madison beat them at home. They're certainly going to beat them on their home floor. But over the course of the last 8-9 games, Coastal Carolina is only 4-4 to the over where this total is concerned. In other words, 4 games over 139.5, 4 games under 139.5. James Madison, 4 games over 139.5, 5 games under in their last 9. So when you talked about Coastal being stagnant somewhat, they're just erratic as far as game final scores are concerned. Could be way up there, could be way down there. And both of these teams, in my estimation, are better defensive teams than they are offensive teams. And if you have the added element of scratching and clawing to move up in these standings for Coastal, they are one of those teams that could slide right into the top 4 if they win tonight. It's possible. For JMU, they could slide into that 5 through 8 category, which earns, 5-6 earns 3 days off, not 4, but 3 or however many. So they both benefit from a win here. So I think when you have that in play, you get a little extra defensive effort. And they're already, to me, the best units on the floor are going to be the defenses. So my guess is going to be, and I don't know this to be true, but I would say this to Garth. I think that 139.5 is the reason why you're playing over, to ask these two just to get to 140 from a fundamental standpoint in this particular situation. I'm not sure. I'm not going to talk you off it. Believe me, just trying to play counter side here. I probably won't get, of all the Sunbelt games tonight, Adam, I would say that this is the one I didn't have marked as one to play.
Yeah.
Just too difficult to handicap. So let's root for Garth. Let's get this thing up and over and see where the chips land.
Yeah, I would agree with that. This was, of all the Sunbelt games, this was the one I was closest to on the number. I think it was at like 6.1. It was very close to either. I want to say this has been in the 5.5 to 6.5 range. And, I guess I'll just close it out by going back to the first meeting. There was 132 points. You could, another reason that may, kind of help Garth make his case is the first meeting 132, yet neither team shot the lights out. Like neither team shot like considerably well in that game. Both of these teams rebound the ball pretty good. So you got a couple of top 100 rebounding teams. I think Coastal's like a top 10 rebounding team, but they also, I think they miss a good amount of shots too. Like that's been my issue with Coastal Carolina offensively at times, is like they take difficult shots and they don't really move the ball at all. So when you watch Coastal Carolina play, there is more standing around than any team I've seen. Like for in the context of Rob, good teams, good basketball teams. I think we can both agree that Coastal Carolina should be in the mix. When you're talking Sun Belt, they're a good team. They are one game off the lead in the league. They're in that group of 7 teams that's either 11-6 or 10-7 in the Sun Belt Conference this year. This team rarely, they don't pass. Like or it's like a pass is out of necessity. So there's zero ball movement, and they take like every shot as a contested 3 or mid-range shot. That's what makes it difficult to play the over, in my opinion, because there's so many tough shots. But then you go back to last game and you're sitting there and you're like, well, Coastal in that game shot 39% from the field, went 7 for 29 from 3. And it was only 7 points off of this number, right? Like couple threes go in. I haven't looked, but it was a 2-point final. You get a little extension. That would have gone over easily. So, maybe the accumulation of second chance points and the frequency at which the shots go up, the math might like math out to getting you over that number. But that's, I guess, my thing with Coastal, which is why I kind of have shied away from playing them, because they've got tough shot makers and I like the way they defend and they're gritty. But to me, they are the type of team that can go 6 minutes without scoring the way they play. And that's what's got me out on Coastal in recent weeks. So I guess we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, another thing just to add real quick, Adam, offensively, both of these teams are in the 300s as far as offensive possession length is concerned. So they both drag it out. And I'll say this, having followed Belmont for, as long as my son entered there 14 years ago, Preston Spradlin was a head coach against Belmont when he was with Moorhead, I think. And Preston Spradlin is just a guy that likes to take the air out of the ball. I mean, his career is the same everywhere he goes. Offensively, they will drain shot clock. And if that happens tonight, you may not get the possessions necessary. Be an interesting game. And you know what? I wouldn't put this. The first game was a 2-point game. I would not put overtime out of the realm of possibility in that one, which helped me out with the side last night. Could always help with the total played over.
Yeah, it's a good point. That to me from a just a intriguing game standpoint is way up there. I just with you, Rob. I didn't have like a great way to get into that from a side perspective, and I don't do much with totals. So good luck with it. We'll be rooting for you either way. So good luck if you do decide to play that. Someone in the chat said, "Looked like you had fun last night." Yeah, North Florida was awesome. What a great little arena. That building was built in 1993. You would have never guessed it though. They amazing branding. They have that Osprey, a UNF, or North Florida on every inch of that building. Like if you were ever to look at a course of like branding your arena, like the way it probably should be. Like I go way too many places, Rob, where there's like very little brand. Like I'm like, who plays here? Who plays in this building? You know what I mean? You're in that building. You know who plays there very clearly. But anyway, yeah, little 6,000 seater. I really enjoyed that. But I'm gonna segue into the next game here. We have a donation because RC Cola wants to talk Akron, Kent State. And I've now been to 93 venues, hundreds of games over the years, over 100 games in the last 4 years since I've started sort of documenting this journey. And still to this date, the hottest crowd of any game and the hottest, like one of the craziest atmospheres I've ever been in was with Brian Power and Jeff Michaels at the Jar like 3-4 years ago when Akron and Kent State were both really good. These two fan bases hate each other. There's almost always a fight of some sort, whether it be between fans, whether it be between players. Earlier this year in Akron, I believe there was a scuffle of some sort with the players before the game, which Rob Bino, I think has happened probably 6 years in a row at this point. These two fan bases can't stand each other. They're 20 minutes away. The two teams don't like each other. And to me, again, that night in Akron, they probably sold 400 too many tickets. I literally think they oversold like GA by like 400. There was people standing on the running track that's around the upper ring just trying to get a look at the game. Yeah, as crazy of an atmosphere as I've been in. And I don't think it'll be any different at Kent State. Kent State, a little bit nicer building, a little bigger. But I fully expect Kent State that game sold out at Akron. I think this will probably be a sellout. I think typically Akron, Kent State is almost always like a sellout, the best crowd you're going to get all year. And Kent State's a team, Rob, amazingly, this team has not been a home underdog in like 7 years, which is that's crazy to me. I mean, Kent State has been, year in and year out in this, they're good. Like they're always up toward the top of the MAC. But that was shocking to me that it's been like, I think it's 7 years it has been since Kent State has been an underdog at home. And that is what they are here today for this game with Akron. So I guess we go back to the first meeting between these two teams. Again, that was an Akron home game. And Akron won that game 69-52. It was not the best effort for Kent State. I believe I'm going off memory here. I think they just straight up could not hit a shot. Like, it was one of those games where it's almost like they couldn't shoot the ball as bad as they did if they attempted to shoot it worse. It was that kind of game for Kent State. Blindfolded, they probably make more shots than they did in that first meeting with Akron. But, the argument here, Rob, that I think we've brought it up. I've heard it pretty much the last couple weeks, is that if Miami, Ohio had a loss, no one would be talking about Miami of Ohio. They'd be talking about Akron being the best team in this league. So my question to you is, do you think Akron is a little bit underrated because of Miami, Ohio? And does Kent State have any shot in the rematch here after just getting bludgeoned in the first meeting? You're muted. I'm muted and you're muted, but you're definitely
we're both muted. Okay.
There we go. Yeah.
Akron, and it could have just been because of the way it was positioned inside the schedule, a game where they didn't play all out. But I was thoroughly disappointed in Akron in that trip to Troy on MAC Sunbelt Saturday. If ever there was a spot to just, flex a little bit, Akron should have done it that day, and they couldn't against Troy. Offensively, they were tied up by that team. Now, since they got back to MAC play, and again, it could have just been one of those where they're like, we don't care. We're in the MAC. We'll go play this thing in Troy, Alabama, and, whatever happens, happens. But since they came back to the MAC, 90 against UMass, 90 against Western, 78 against Ball State. In fact, Ball State was last Friday night when I laid 13.5, and they won by 13. And they were up by like 16 with a minute and a half left. So that was a tough loss. Buffalo, they scored 99 again. Listen, you're absolutely right about Kent not being able to make a shot in that first game. 1 of 23 from three-point range is almost St. John's-esque from the Connecticut game the other night when St. John's missed their final 24 shots of the game, I think it was. So 1 of 23 just doesn't happen when you're Kent State. It's not going to happen again. I would, I don't know what the odds on that would be, but I'd be willing to play it. Kent won't go 1 for 23 tonight in this game. They also played without Rob Whaley, their third leading scorer in that one, which does make a difference because Kent disperses points pretty well. It's not a top-heavy scoring team, so Whaley's importance to the team is that much. He's played almost every game, I think every game since then, so back in the lineup here tonight. What's interesting about Kent is they had 2 10-minute frames in that game where they scored 6 and 7 points. First 10 minutes of the game, only scored 6. You can see that. You're in the opposing arena. You might have to take an opening punch in such a hated rivalry. They did. But then they started the second half the same way, 7 points. Again, 2 things I don't think are going to happen here tonight. My initial look was going to be toward the over in this game until I saw where they put the number, and I'm not saying that they shouldn't have put it there. You're supposed to put it at 165 to discourage some people who want to run to the window with over money like I do. It's up to 166. I don't know. You're asking for 83 aside. It's not out of the question, but it's out of my league, so I can't play it. I would think, Akron is, let's put it this way, the difference between the talent level of these two teams is probably more than the opener of 4.5. It's been bet down to 3.5, 4 now, I think, based on rivalry, home floor revenge, et cetera, et cetera. And Kent is no pushover. But I do think Akron's the cream of the crop inside that league. I can't get there with either side here. This is more of those one of those in-game type bets for me, Adam. For like if Kent gets out of the chute really, really fast here, I would play Akron immediately to get back into the game. So that's the way I'll probably look. They priced me out of total and sidewise, even though I think Akron is more than 4 points better on most given days. This one, second time around with revenge, with your third leading scorer back. If you're Kent, I don't know. It keeps me away.
Yeah, you said it as that. I really can't say it better. I'll apply that to the side as well. I couldn't believe this opened Akron -4. My handicap loves Akron here, but I am shocked that I'm being forced to lay 2 possessions on the road in this rivalry. Like I just the way that the way that this game has been priced in years past, I did not think I thought it was going to be more like a pick. I felt like this was going to be closer to pick, and Akron would have been instantly on my card if that was the case. Because they didn't see, that's the thing. Akron didn't even play a great. They didn't even play a great game in the first one, and they won the game easily. And you just don't see Akron play poorly very often, right? Like that's just go back through the years of the last sort of this run where Akron has been really good. They don't play. There's not many nights where this team sort of no shows, and that's the thing. That first meeting, I don't even think they played close to their best game, but Kent State could not buy a bucket. So you talk about the Troy game, and I think again I've been willing to throw out the MAC Sun Belt rematch is a little bit tough because it's like some of these teams like Akron, right? Like you kind of have your sights set on winning the league. They're 14-1 in league play. They're one game behind Miami of Ohio, who was on a generational run, but most people, at least back then, thought that they had a loss coming to them at some point. So like I look at that and I'm like, I almost am willing to throw out the Troy loss because of course all of the MAC schools went on the road in the second leg of the MAC Sun Belt thing. So at the time you were basically asking Akron to go on the road to Eastern Michigan, go down to Troy to play a non-conference game, and then they had to come back and play like what was a pretty, kind of like higher profile home game with UMass a couple days later. So since the Troy loss, they dropped 99 on UMass in a win. They dropped 90 on Western Michigan, won by 17. Blowouts of Ball State and Buffalo. And of course, the Ball State game we talked about on this show, Ball State backdoored a 14-point spread right at the end. That was a 20-point game for most of the time. So to me, like I'll go back to your point. Akron's just a better team by like a wide margin here, in my opinion. If you put these two teams on a neutral, I think I'd have Akron somewhere in like the 7, and I think I'd make Akron probably 7.5 on a neutral. 6.5, 7.5. Akron, Kent State. Let's say this game occurs when Brian Powers at the Rocket Arena in a couple of weeks in the MAC tournament. I think Akron's like a 6.5 point favorite, 7.5 point favorite. So to me, like much better. I just didn't want to lay 4. I still think they're the right side. I even with the 4, something tells me that this is like a 9 to 11 point Akron win. They pull away, hit some free throws, probably finish the job right around double digits. So do what you will with that. All right, let's continue on here. We've got another donation, much appreciated here. Mad Max is in the building, and I'm glad he brought this one up because this is a game I absolutely wanted to talk about. Very interesting game here. He says, Dayton is coming off a big upset. Yeah, and Dayton is starting to play really good ball all of a sudden. I think you, Rob, the entire country maybe left Dayton for dead a few weeks back. And they have bounced back in a big way. They're playing their best ball of the season. And now they're hitting the road to take on a George Washington team that just got their best player back in Rafael Castro. Mad Max likes GW here. I was very impressed with GW and the crowd and how loud that building got a couple Fridays ago when I was there for a Friday night game against George Mason. I can only imagine the crowd will be that and then some tonight for national TV, ESPN2 against a Dayton team that's a perennial power in this league. So are you riding with the home GW Revs tonight, Rob, or do you think Dayton continues their run?
I'll say this. I was very surprised by the day. And you know what? Money wasn't surprised, Adam, because there was a flood of money on Dayton against St. Louis on Tuesday night. I mean, that game got
3-point move.
Yeah, like
3.5 point move, 3-point move. Yeah.
And it turned out to be true. Somehow, some way, Dayton found a way to reverse that massacre that you were present for out at Chaffetz in St. Louis. 77-62. That game was never even close. So maybe it was just a revenge thing. They have started to put up points the last 3 games. It's not the easiest thing to do on the road to put up 82 against George Mason in what's really a slow-footed game. So Dayton shot really, really well there, came back with 78 against Duquesne, come back with 77 against St. Louis, and all of a sudden the offense is what's clicking. These teams did play the one time already, though, and it was a GW 7-point win, and Castro was present in that game. Not necessarily a dominant force when we go back through the box, only 8 points in that game, but he was present there. It'll be interesting. I'm almost of the same opinion as Mad Max that there could be a potential letdown here for Dayton after beating St. Louis. I have to believe that just in seeing that game for about 25 minutes of it, the amount of energy that UD had in that game from the outset was incredible. It's like St. Louis was never really in that one. Complete reversal of the first time around. So I don't know if you can take that same energy now and bring it on the road or not. Anthony Grant's team did have a bad stretch, a 6-game stretch where they lost 5 of the 6. Seem to have righted the ship now, but I think GW can right the ship here too. Couple of things where this one is concerned. I feel like I don't really want to lay 3.5, to be honest with you, because I don't want to take the stance that I think Dayton's win streak is kind of bogus, and maybe they're just in a letdown spot here. Because if it's not bogus, and if that wasn't just a letdown, if they have turned the corner, then GW might not win this game at home. Dayton certainly comes with a little bit of revenge. We'll see how Castro works himself back into the lineup. A lot of reasons that would keep me off of GW. Money has pointed that direction early, 3 up to 3.5. Totals come down 154.5 to 152.5. The chat is picking an awful lot of, and I shouldn't even say they're picking a lot of difficult games to handicap today, but I would say that the entire board is kind of full of games where I can go, if I put up a wall and had arguments from the left and arguments from the right, and they both went back and forth. There's a lot of legit arguments, two-way legit arguments to make in these games. And 100%. This is one of those. So I probably pass my way through this one.
No, I'm with you, Rob. That is, where I'm at with this one too, because, Castro, there's no discounting his importance to the GW team. He is their best rim defender. He's their best player. Last game, I feel like he was kind of just out there at times, sort of getting his feet wet. Still goes for 16 and 7. GW drops 104 on LaSalle. I mean, there's no question George Washington is a better team when he is on the court. It's not, in my opinion, that. It's not close. I know Hunger played well in his absence, but he is just not the force on both ends that Castro is. So my whole thing is this, though. The Castro is properly priced into this number, in my opinion, 3.5. That's where it should be. And I guess I'm with you, Rob. I don't know that I want to play against Dayton right now with just sort of their tenacity on both ends of the floor. And my gut says Dayton's a little bit more battle tested, a little bit more tough than GW. And, going back to the earlier meeting, Dayton won that game by 7 in a stretch where they were not playing their best basketball. They had lost a home game to Liberty. They kind of barely beat Fordham, barely beat Loyola Chicago, which it was almost, they won the game by 2 and got treated like it was a loss, because that just beating Loyola Chicago only by 2 was almost like an embarrassment. And they still turned around and beat GW. But now for Dayton, I mean, you've had wins at George Mason, who is a team that's been in the top half of this league this year. The win over St. Louis. So, yeah, are you going to play the letdown spot on the road, which is very possible. And that building is I couldn't believe how loud it got in there. And I bet tonight's crowd is better than the crowd that was there for the GW George Mason game. And again, George Washington just got their best player back. So you have to bump them up in your ratings. It is we're here. Listen, we're here to give out picks, and we're going to do our share of that. And Rob and I are each going to give one out in a minute. But we're also here to break down the games that you guys ask about. And sometimes it's, that's another one that's quite difficult to really land on something for me that I would be confident on. So let's go ahead. This is so Manzi. Shout out to you. I couldn't remember who gave us the Cal Poly game yesterday, but Manzi hit that with Cal Poly, and he wanted to talk about the Dayton game, which we just did. So we just hit his game, and I was going to say a lot of people wanted that one in the chat, and it's a tough one. It's going to be a great watch, national TV. Okay, this one's very interesting to me. Let's go back to the Sun Belt, the Fun Belt, as some people call it, Rob Vino. And it's going to be a fun Friday night because these games are crazy. So Garth says Louisiana Monroe plus 19.5 against Troy. Now, Troy, it has the easiest road because if they win, and they're a massive favorite to do so, I believe they pretty much lock themselves into the 2 seed. But they did almost get clipped by Louisiana Monroe a couple weeks ago, 10 days ago, in a game they won by 1. And so, Rob, I have Louisiana Monroe has shown value on my numbers every single game, pretty much every game. I've been higher than the market on 4-26 Louisiana Monroe since the beginning of the season. But the interesting thing about that is they cover a lot. Like, they're always a huge favorite or huge underdog. My number pretty much always shows value. And a lot of times they lose, but cover big numbers. And that was the case in the first meeting where they covered easily against Troy. And my number loved Louisiana Monroe in that game. So my number, Garth, I'm with you. My number loves Louisiana Monroe here. But do you think, Rob, this is the spot, a spot where Troy could run it up or would want to run it up? And if you don't have anything on the side, can you talk to us about the total?
Yeah, this one's a little bit difficult, Adam, but I think the number probably leans or lends itself, I'll put it that way, lends itself to a play on UL Monroe for one exterior reason. And that would be if Troy's out in front, 3 minutes to go by 20, 21 points, they're going to pull their guys and preserve them for the conference tournament. There's no sense in a game like that to leave them out on the floor, which immediately lends itself to a backdoor UL Monroe cover. So you have that on your side if you're taking the points. The 77-76 game was a complete surprise. Monroe, if there's one thing they can do, it's at times score enough to cover 19.5 or to get under that number for sure. But they don't play any defense whatsoever. And Troy is so good defensively. And maybe Monroe got their attention with that 77-76 game. And now Troy is here. I thought Troy was playing for the number 1 seed. Maybe they are playing for 2.
They might be. You might be right. I think there's scenarios where they could win the 1. I think there is.
And so regardless, though, they're one of those teams that will get the 4 days off, right? You just got to win this game. You're at home. You're against a team that maybe has got your attention the last time you played, because these, all of these Sun Belt rematches that will occur tonight, they've all been in with like the last 14 days. These are not games that were played back on January 1, back in, middle of January, second week, whatever. They've all been played recently. So it's got to be a little bit fresh in Troy's mind. I have no doubt they're going to win this game, and probably Garth either. But of course, the number's a great equalizer here, and the 19.5 does loom large. I would be very fearful of playing Troy in this instance just because of the backdoor. However, they're way better than UL Monroe on both ends. And if that 77-76 awoke them a little bit or woke them up a little bit, then I could see them, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a score at the top of my head. 83-62, I guess, is where you'd have to be. And maybe Monroe can get more than 62. So I'm going to leave my thoughts, on Garth's side here, just because I don't trust the very end of the game. But I do think Troy can get away with a double-digit win here. Total 153 the first time around. This time we're looking... Let's get the current. This time we're looking at the same exact number, 153, and it's been bet down from 156. And I think that's solely because money, and I would include myself on this bandwagon. I would expect Troy to play way better defense tonight with a number 1 seed at stake. And maybe Monroe doesn't come near that 76 number again. So I can understand the move towards the under here.
This is going to be my parlay leg. I cannot ignore a this big of a variance, my number to the market number. And I see that Noah says UL Monroe is horrendous, but I'm gonna quantify that real quick. They're getting 19.5 points. I'm at 15.8. Okay. They got destroyed by South Alabama because South Alabama just plays a nasty zone, and that's going to be tough for a team that like UL Monroe that doesn't really have shooters. But Troy does not set up like that. Troy's going to play man. It's going to be, up and down. And Rob, you made such a tremendous point about there's no style points here. This is going to be like, if they've got a 15-point lead or a 20-point lead, they're not going to risk a single person getting hurt before that conference tournament. It's going to be unload the bench. The second they get up 20, it's unload the bench. Get the student manager in on senior night or whatever, right? Like let's just get anyone and everyone. All the walk-ons are going to come in. And UL Monroe, they've played hard right to the end in these games. They covered 15.5 against Arkansas State. They covered 17.5 against Troy. These are all recent. Covered 14.5 against Texas State. They cover the Ball State game was a little bit more competitive. They beat Old Dominion. They got a win in that game, 14.5-point underdog. Those are all within the last month. So Louisiana Monroe has been extremely profitable as this size of an underdog in these games. And now you're talking about a massive, massive premium to back Troy because there's this thought that they've got to win for the 1 seed. It's a must win. Yeah. No one said they had to win by 20 though, and embarrass Monroe and put their starters out there and leave them out there to risk injury. So I think you're going to have if you don't get it just from the game being competitive, which we just saw these teams play to a 1-point game, you might get it from just straight up, hey, let's get the reserves in, let's get the walk-ons in, and then all of a sudden Monroe comes, clips it, it's an 18-point final, you cash easily. This one, I'm going to think about this at 19.5. This might make my client card, but yeah, this will be my leg of the parlay. Monroe plus 19.5. I love that angle. Someone said, Adam, stop it. I'm sorry. 19.5 is an insane number for that game. And that is my leg of the parlay. What about you, Rob Bino? What's your leg of the parlay?
Yeah, well, 2 choices here, Adam. One of them would involve your Siena Saints against Fairfield tonight. But I'll go the other route just because it's been really, really kind to me so far this season. And I'm going to play the Sacred Heart Mount St. Mary's game over 149.5 here. In a league where tempo doesn't exist. I mean, this is the one of the slowest leagues in the country. And for Mount St. Mary's, they're on a pretty good roll right now. I just want to put some context into this play here. We've talked enough about Sacred Heart this year. We know their style. We know they shoot it well from 3. We know they lack defense. They're going to play with pace, et cetera, et cetera. But Mount St. Mary's, a team that probably is happy to find a team that's going to play pace with them. It'll be the second time they played this year. But right now, currently, Mount St. Mary's on a 4-game win streak, playing really good basketball. But what got me the most when I was doing this handicap early this morning was the fact that how do you get, if you're Mount St. Mary's, this is driving me towards extreme tempo in this game here tonight. How do you get Merrimack to play a 71-possession game with you? That doesn't happen with that. Merrimack's not going to play a 7, but yet they did, and they scored 70 points, gave up 87, but they got Merrimack to go up and down. How do you get Niagara and Jerry McNamara to play a 70-possession game? It doesn't have Niagara 63, 62, 59. Just don't play that fast. So I've got a team here that wants to go. Sacred Heart's going to go. They want to go. We should get more than enough or an ample amount of scoring opportunities here, which is always what you're looking for when you're playing over. And then I just think the price range is good here. 149.5 for a game that I feel can get to 154 or better. And in fact, first time around, they got to 167 against one another. Anquan Hill was present in that game. All guys were on deck for the Sacred Heart side. So to me, I've got Mount St. Mary's playing really good offensive basketball right now, playing fast tempo against teams that don't want to move whatsoever. Going to get a team that does want to move tonight. Both teams can fill it up. I thought 149.5. This play is 50%, 60% against the number, and they've moved it up a little. 148 opener was even better price, but here we're still under 150. I like it. And on top of that, Sacred Heart is off of a very poor offensive game, the prior game here. So I'm always a guy who's looking at bounce back. If you do something really well and you didn't do it well the prior game, I look for that bounce back. I think you get it out of Sacred Heart here. That's going to be my leg of the parlay here, Adam. A little Northeast Conference basketball tonight. I'll go back to what, I've kind of got twin alma maters. UNH, Sacred Heart. Going to go to Sacred Heart tonight. They've been good to me. That game total, Mount St. Mary's Sacred Heart over 149.5.
Yeah, this is, Sacred Heart for me, Rob, kind of a disappointing season. I thought that this team talent-wise would have been sort of in the mix for that like top 4 or top 5 in the MAC. They're going to finish probably closer to 10th, 9th or 10th depending on what happens in these next couple games. But the reason that they've been so disappointing to me is not, it hasn't been the offensive end that is like caused them to disappoint. They still make a lot of threes. They still play aesthetically pleasing offense most of the time. They do. I mean, they will force up. There's no shot that Sacred Heart does not like to take. But the nice part about if you like an over is they get them up quick. They will get them up quick, and it's like they're typically not running a ton of shot clock. What I've noticed that makes sense for your handicap with Mount St. Mary's is this is not nearly the Mount St. Mary's team, in my opinion, that made the run to the NCAA tournament last year. And they don't have as much of an identity. So I've found that Mount St. Mary's is a little bit more inclined to play the game that their opponent wants to play. And I think if they play the game, like if you look at Canisius, Niagara, they've played like Ryder, all teams. Like the last 3 games for Mount St. Mary's, they've played bad offensive teams that play slower games. And of course, the scores were lower scoring. But when they've played some of the faster paced teams in this league, we'll just use the first meeting between these two teams way back on December 3rd, 87-80, right? Like I feel like, Siena was a team that I remember Jerry wanting to slow down Mount St. Mary's in that game. And Siena beat them 67-50. So I find that Mount St. Mary's you can coax them into playing your game. And if they play Sacred Heart's game here, there's probably 170 points in the game. Like because that is the type of game that Sacred Heart will push for. So yeah, what did you say your number was? Certainly wasn't 170.
149.5.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Rob. If Sacred Heart dictates this game, you're going to get you will easily get to 150, even if neither team is having a great shooting night, just by the sheer volume of shots that are likely to be attempted.
And real quick, as you were talking, I realized you pointed out another mistake as I was rattling off 1,000 thoughts out of my head. How come I get Greg Paulus and Jerry McNamara mixed up? But they're like the same person to me.
Rob Bino, they're both Syracuse legends. They are both legends in the 315 area code. Greg Paulus, former Mr. Basketball, CBA Syracuse, and of course, Greg Paulus, incredible high school career in the Syracuse area, and then Jerry McNamara, maybe the greatest career of anyone to ever step foot in the 315 area code. So, it's an honest mistake.
My apologies, because they're the same person to me. The point guard, it's crazy. But yes, 149.5, and I think Sacred Heart and Mount St. Mary's get that thing up and over. So let's knock down this parlay tonight.
2-teamer tonight for us. Over in Sacred Heart, Mount St. Mary's over 149.5. I'm going to go with Louisiana Monroe plus 19.5. That's your 2-teamer for today. We will be back on Last Call tomorrow with a 3-teamer. We'll throw Kelly in Vegas into the mix. So let's try to get this one and set ourselves up, for a nice 3-teamer tomorrow. I've got a 5% play tonight. Rob and I have the joint package up, 3-day all access, a much more cost-effective way to get that 5%er. Hope everyone has a great weekend. Cash all your tickets, and Rob and I will see you as part of Last Call in the morning right here on WagerTalk TV.